If I could only buy one prime lens for my Sony APS-C camera, even in 2019, I would still buy the Sony A6500 1.8. In this video I will give you a brief overview of this lens and show you what I think are its most important strengths. My name is Werner, I live in the Italian Alps and this channel is about filmmaking and GoPro. There is not the one perfect lens that is optimal for all situations and needs. Many things I say about this lens today are directly related to my personal situation and my personal needs. It may be that you yourself have completely different needs and that a different decision would make more sense for you. For this reason, I would like to briefly explain my situation before showing you the strengths and weaknesses of the lens. The region I live in is called Sappheiros. It is located in the Southern Alps and only about 14% of the territory is under 1000 meters altitude. Actually, it is the perfect area for landscape photography. Nevertheless, my focus is clearly on filmmaking. I just want to capture the beauty of this country and spend as much time as possible in nature. For me, this is a hobby and I am lucky to be in a position to film and shoot what I like and do not have to earn my living with it. This is another reason why my needs and approach differ from those of a professional filmmaker and photographer. Of course, this also applies to the equipment requirements. I need equipment that is small, handy and versatile. In most cases I want to film handheld, only in rare cases I want to use a tripod or a gimbal. As I said, my main focus is on filmmaking, but photography also plays a role. It often happens that I film myself, especially to make these videos for YouTube. I have been using a Sony A6300 for a year and a half, but most of what I say in this video also applies to the recently introduced A6400 or the now very affordable A6000. The 35 1.8 was the first lens I bought after the kit lens. If I have to judge a lens, then the following aspects are important for me. Which features does the lens have and how is the build quality? What is the lens suitable for and how versatile can it be used, or do these properties meet my needs? How is the optical quality and what look can be created with this lens? How do I like the bokeh? The 35 1.8 is a very small lens. It therefore fits perfectly to the small body of the A6000 series. It looks very high quality and stable, even if it's mostly made of plastic. The lens is relatively light and the camera seems well balanced. In combination with an A6300 or A6400, you have a very small and light package that you can take with you anywhere and that you can achieve very high quality results. The first special feature of this lens is of course the large aperture of 1.8. This wide aperture makes it very easy to create a shallow depth of field and thus obtain a cinematic image. In addition, a wide aperture lets a lot of light onto the sensor, which leads to advantages in low light conditions. The Sony 35 1.8 has an excellent autofocus. Since I often film myself, a reliable autofocus is very important to me. In combination with the A6300 and probably even more so with the A6400, the autofocus works extremely fast and absolutely reliable. A large part of the videos on this channel and almost all of the shots I speak into the camera were shot with this lens. I can't remember a single time that the lens didn't capture me correctly. The autofocus is almost silent and can't be heard on video recordings. The lens also has a focus ring for manual focusing. It is a focus by wire and therefore an electronic focusing system. In general, you can focus very well manually with it. However, the distance between near and infinity is relatively long. You need a whole turn, which can make it difficult in some cases to pull focus manually. On the other hand, you can set the focus very precisely. Besides the very good autofocus, the image stabilization of the lens was absolutely crucial for me. In most cases I shoot my videos handheld and often I shoot in 4K. Like the A6400, the Sony A6300 has no internal image stabilization. In addition, both cameras in 4K have a problem with rolling shutter. This is another reason why a good stabilization of the video image is especially important. It's clear that there are other ways to stabilize the image, for example in post. However, all alternative ways of stabilization have decisive disadvantages. Whether an image stabilization in the lens is really necessary for you is up to you. Of course, it depends on how you shoot and whether you usually use a tripod or whether your main focus is on photography. Personally, I wouldn't buy a lens for the Sony A6300 or A6400 that isn't image stabilized. However, this has to do with my needs and because handheld filming is important to me. The image stabilization is also probably the biggest difference between the Sony 35 and the Sigma 31.4. What is the lens particularly suitable for and what is not? 35mm on aps-c corresponds to about 50mm on full frame. It is often said that this is the typical field of view of the human eye. The special strength of this focal length is that it is very versatile. It is still wide enough to capture an action scene, an establishing shot or a landscape shot. And it's still good for portraits or close-ups without causing too much distortion. On the other hand, with 35mm, the lens is not a specialist for wide landscape shots, nor it is a specialist for portraits. With an aperture of 1.8, you can achieve a nice shallow depth of field even at 35. As you can see, you can make beautiful cinematic shots, which is very important for me. The lens also has an acceptable minimum focusing distance of 30 centimeters, which means you can get relatively close to objects. You can make beautiful B-roll close-ups in this way due to the focal length of 35, which is perhaps wider than that of a typical macro lens. Objects in the foreground appear a little larger, but of course this lens is not a macro lens. Now I would like to show you some examples of the look you can create with this lens. The bokeh is pleasantly soft and beautiful with the aperture wide open. I would also say that the lens is really sharp, even though this feature probably doesn't play such a decisive role in filmmaking. Overall, the optical quality of the lens is very good. There are no particular distortions or other major flaws. Even as sun stars get beautiful. Especially from Sigma there are some interesting alternatives. However, these lenses do not have image stabilization. But you can only decide for yourself whether this is decisive for you or not. In a nutshell, the lens has the following strengths: a good build quality and a size that fits very well to the small body of the A6000 series. The combination of camera and lens is very handy. With 1.8, a very wide aperture, which allows you to take nice cinematic images as well as great portraits. An image stabilization that also allows you to shoot video handheld with 35mm, a focal length that is very versatile, good optical quality and a very nice and soft bokeh. With this I would like to say goodbye from the Alps for today. If you liked this short review, give me a like as feedback and I will see you next time.